It's like stupid how nerve-wracking this is.
I know. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this podcast. If you happen to find it on the internet by mistake, thinking it was something else,
We gotcha. Hello.
Don't change it, because you're in for a treat. My name is Matt.
My name is Carlie.
And together we are
The Google Scholars.
We didn't plan that.
We really didn't.
It was totally improvised.
So, Matt, the Google Scholars podcast is your brainchild, and why don't you tell our listeners how you came up with the idea?
I came up with the idea because basically I just wanted to have something to do during this pandemic because I was bored and wanted to do something other than just schoolwork.
And you thought, what can I rope the only other adult human I have regular access to into doing with me?
Yeah, so I knew that I couldn't do a podcast by myself because that would be extremely boring.
It would just be weird.
And, it would just be me rambling on for however long. And so I asked her, do you want to do this podcast with me? And what did you say?
I said, I guess, kind of. Well, we'll see.
Yeah. So that's basically how it went. So, this is just a sort of a pet project, and we'll just kind of see how it goes. We have no expectations other than to just have fun.
And so in each episode, as we've imagined it, we will tell each other about a topic that we have chosen, or chosen for each other, or we hope down the line, maybe y'all will have chosen for us. And you might learn some stuff, and you might unlearn some stuff, but the important thing are the friends we make along the way.
Absolutely. Before we get into it, let me introduce to you my wife, Carlie.
Hello.
Her name, of course, is Carlie.
What have you heard?
She's 31 years old. She is a Capricorn. She enjoys coffee. She loves holiday decorations. She likes urban fantasy books and making lists. She dislikes driving. For some reason, the feel of velvet.
I don't fight me on the feel of velvet. It's horrific. I hate it.
That was actually a new one for me. I didn't know that until recently.
Was there any velvet in the house?
No.
No, there is not any velvet in the house.
I should have known. She also dislikes slugs and clashing sounds. And by clashing sounds, I mean like if the radio was playing and the TV was playing at the same time.
It's my nightmare.
Carlie knows a lot about psychology and is currently a graduate student in counseling. She also knows a lot about veterinary care and nonprofit organizations since she works for a nonprofit. Carlie and I met in 2009 while we were working together, and we've been together for 12 years and have been married for 7 of those 12 years.
7 already.
Would you like to introduce me?
I mean, I think I can manage it. Matt's 35 years old. He is an INFP. He's the INFP to my ENFJ. He likes raccoons, 90s alternative music, lemonade. He loves especially Simply Lemonade.
It's my favorite beverage.
That's his whole thing, and he's also partial to D&D, our Dungeons and Dragons. He dislikes having the inside of his elbow touched.
Well, do you know anybody who likes having the inside of their elbow touched?
I don't know if I know anybody who hates it as much as you do.
Yeah, it is weird.
And he doesn't like raw onions, or when guns aren't accurate in movies or TV. So if there's the wrong number of bullets, or if somebody pulls back the slide, or when it sounds like a trigger is cocked when all they do is point the gun.
If the physics are all wrong, it just really annoys me, because it means that nobody did their research.
Nobody Google scholared it?
Yeah. When it came to guns.
So nobody Googled it, and he hates that. Matt is a full-time undergrad video game development major, and neither of us know a lot about very many things, but some of the things that he actually does know a bit about are video games and computers, and weirdly, astronomy. I think it's weird how much you know about astronomy, based on, like, you took, I think, literally 2 community college classes, 6 years ago.
Yeah, I know a little bit about astronomy. I don't know a lot. I took some classes at a community college and learned about it, and probably know more than a typical person does.
Definitely more than I do.
But I think it seems like a lot to her. Seems like I know a lot to her, but that's just because she doesn't know anything.
Oh, okay. I guess we figured out what I'm going to talk about in the next podcast episode.
But I could tell you what the main sequence is, and I can tell you what convection is if you ask.
Can you tell us what the prime directive is?
The prime directive is where you don't interfere.
Nobody was really asking.
Okay, never mind then. We've prepared a couple of topics for you today, and if you happen to be one of the people who is listening to this, you can reach us at thegscholars@gmail.com and submit suggestions. Yeah, whatever you want.
We'll literally talk about whatever you want. Just the quality of the lecture is TBD.
Honestly, you'll be doing us a favor, because it's less work for us when people tell us what they want us to research. The topic that I picked today, well, the first one anyway, is a real hair splitter.
No.
I combed through the internet for several hours looking up interesting and fun facts about, you guessed it, or you probably didn't.
I guessed it.
The hair comb. Not a lot of people know about the hair comb, said Donald Trump.
Oh, God. So, not Andrew Combs or Luke Combs, just hair combs?
I don't know who either of those people are.
Well, what you should have done is what I did, which was Google Combs.
Celebrities with the last name Combs?
Yes.
Oh, there's Jeffrey Combs. He was in Star Trek.
See, that's what you should have done, is exactly what I just did.
And if anybody knows who that is, then you are a nerdy sci-fi geek. Carlie, what do you think that you know about combs?
Something that I think I know about combs. I know very little about combs, other than I think just how to use them. But we did see, and I don't want to steal your thunder on this one, but when we were watching This Is Us the other night, I saw a scene where they used a hot comb on a young lady, and you identified it immediately. The hot comb! So now I know about hot combs, and I'm excited to learn more.
Yeah. And I knew what a hot comb was, but, after you've been researching combs for a while, and you see one on TV, it kind of stands out.
So tell me more about combs.
So combs are they're among the oldest artifacts found by archaeologists in terms of, human-made artifacts. They go back to about 5,000 years ago in Persia and Africa. So here's a few tidbits about combs.
Lay 'em on me.
The world's most celebrated comb was carved in eastern Siberia during the 18th century, but it might surprise you to know what it was carved out of.
Ivory?
Okay. It might surprise you to know that it was carved out of ivory from an extinct mammoth species.
Okay. Well, I guess that is kind of surprising.
But that was a really good guess. So yeah, ivory is one of the many materials that the comb has been made out of over the centuries. Before the 19th century, decorative combs were the most valuable jewels in China and Japan. So they weren't just for grooming, they were also for fashion. Do you want to guess what the most valuable comb in the world is made out of?
Platinum.
That's close. Gold.
Oh, well, see, I was gonna say gold, and I was like, I feel like that would weigh a lot of pounds. I guess if it was tiny.
Yeah, I wonder how that would do in your hair. It seems like it would fall out all the time.
It sounds like it's more for gently setting into your hair rather than... Maybe it's like, you just kind of put it in your hair and pose for a photo.
Yeah. But it was found by, I don't know who it was found by.
God, get it together.
The most valuable comb in the world was found in the tomb of a Scythian leader near the Black Sea, dating from the 5th century BC. The comb is made of 10 ounces of pure gold.
10 ounces doesn't seem like so much.
Yeah, I don't even know how much that would weigh.
10 ounces, probably.
I mean, let me rephrase that. I don't know how much 10 ounces feels in weight.
Go on.
From culture to culture, it is believed that almost all early people independently invented combs. Early combs looked strikingly similar, built with 5 or 10 teeth. Anthropologists suggest that they were designed to resemble, what do you think that they...
Mouths? Hands?
Yeah, hands.
Fingers.
So, because they had about 5 teeth on them, that's why anthropologists believe that they originally were designed to resemble the human hand. Ancient Egyptians were the first to produce double-sided combs. Here's another interesting fact.
Is it interesting, really?
All of these facts are interesting. It's the comb.
Yeah, the most interesting subject on the face of the planet.
I really picked a winner here with the comb. Another this is fascinating.
It's fascinating.
It's not interesting, it's fascinating. So, we know that combs were made out of bone and ivory and even wood, but can you guess around what era that they stopped using those materials to make the comb and what material they started using?
Well, most combs these days I think are made of plastic.
That is correct.
In terms of the era, I'm going to go out on a limb and say the Jurassic era.
Yes. There's
World
actually...
War II.
Well, it was the 1930s.
I'm getting pretty close with these guesses.
Yeah, I know. You're
ruining it?
No, you're not. It's gold.
Yeah, gold comb.
This is actually a fact that it is fascinating, and it's unrelated to combs, but it's probably the most interesting fact out of all the facts that I have gathered. I didn't know that plastic was invented in the 1930s. So, yeah. And it made me wonder, like, what they used to make everything before then, but, you know.
Well, everything was a lot more sustainable and reusable.
Yeah, everything was like made out of metals and
glass and bone and gold.
Yes. In ancient China, combs were worn as hair accessories that reflected one's social status. So, the type of comb that you had in your hair reflected how important you were, which is not something we see a lot of today.
I would say not. I don't know.
We need to bring that back.
Well, if somebody came up to me and they were wearing like a solid gold comb or like a very fancy, well-decorated comb, I might think that person seems important.
Yes. I actually do have more interesting stuff now.
I love how your notes are like a surprise to you too. And my favorite thing that you've done so far is you've like tried to offer information that you realize you don't have.
Yeah, so what you will learn in this podcast by listening to us is that Carlie comes more prepared than I do, and I am more of a fly by the seat of my pants kind of guy.
Which is fine, because you're the one doing the editing, which means you have to deal with your own bullshit the whole time.
That's true. In Denmark, a 1,200-year-old comb was discovered that shed light on the mysterious birth and development of the Viking alphabet.
That is interesting.
It is. It's all interesting, right?
You're right.
When a team of Danish archaeologists first discovered the fragments of a comb, they thought nothing of it. Combs are some of the most common archaeological remains from the Viking Age. But they scooped it up in a pile of soil and sent it to a conservation lab, as is the procedure in archaeological digs. It was only when the conservationists called, saying that there was something unusual about it, that they rushed back to the lab to inspect it. The comb had several lines etched into it, spelling out a word in runes, the ancient Viking alphabet. Now here's I think the most practical part of this story. Do you want to know what the Viking word said on the comb?
What if I just said no? No, I don't want to know. What?
Well,
tell me. We all want to know. We're in suspense.
The word written on the comb in ancient Viking
was suck it.
that was the second one they found.
Okay.
No, the word that was written on the comb, and are you ready?
Dying to know.
It was comb. And on the other side of the comb,
that's what said suck it.
Unfortunately, no.
Ugh.
But it's better than that.
Okay. I don't know what could be better, but go ahead.
On the other side of the comb was written to comb.
The noun versus the verb.
So in Viking runes, one side of the comb said comb, and the other side said to comb. I am not sure why they did that.
To differentiate between the verb and the noun.
You think?
Sure. Yes, because I am a scholar and I say yes. I'm an expert.
I mean, I thought it was weird, but
here I am hearing this for the first time. I'm declaring myself an expert, and I decide that that's why.
That is how we get facts.
Yes. I declare them facts.
It may not seem like a big deal, but archaeologists say the find is of great significance, giving clues to the spread of literacy during the Viking Age and the link between writing and urbanization.
To comb.
To comb.
To comb.
Or not to comb. That is the question. As one of the earliest examples of Viking runes, the comb provides evidence of the birth of the new runic alphabet that came into use around 800 AD.
I have no commentary. I'm rapt with attention.
That's fine. Moving on.
If you look at me expectantly.
So that's a little bit of information about about combs
To comb.
in the ancient world and the significance of the comb and how important it was in the development of language.
All right.
Right?
Yeah, sure.
This is probably more important and relevant to our culture. But have you ever heard of Madam C.J. Walker?
I believe that I've heard of Madam C.J. Walker.
What do you know about Madam C.J. Walker?
Madam C.J. Walker is a philanthropist.
I mean, probably.
She was the first millionaire? Self-made millionaire? Like a
yes,
woman? Yeah.
She is said to be the nation's first self-made female millionaire.
Yeah, nowadays we just like to call them millionaires. But but it used to be you gotta call them a female millionaire.
Madam C.J. Walker built an empire developing beauty products for African American women. Her 10-foot portrait by artist Sonia Clark, made entirely of plastic combs, is an iconic favorite at the Blanton Museum in Austin, Texas. And we actually saw that while we were at the Blanton.
It's a cool piece.
And it was one of the pieces that I think I looked at more than others. Of course, at the time, I paid no attention. I don't pay attention to the facts.
I don't pay attention to the facts. The
Yeah.
Google Scholar.
I don't pay attention to the facts of the art pieces. I just look at them. And it was actually during my research that I Googled comb art and rediscovered that piece. Walter Simmons was an inventor for an enhanced patent for the hot comb. Walter Simmons of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, received U.S. patent number 1,362,823.
Oh, wow. I'm glad you provided us with that information.
Yeah, you're welcome. On December 21st, 1920, for an improved comb that straightened hair. According to Walter Simmons' patent, he invented a heated comb that removed kinks from the hair. The hot comb, also known as a straightening comb, is a metal comb that is used to straighten moderate or coarse hair to create a smoother hair texture. The hot comb was an invention originally developed in France as a way for women with coarse curly hair to achieve a fine straight look. However, it was Annie Malone who first patented this tool. But here's where Madam C.J. Walker comes in.
I'm excited.
Madam C.J. Walker was Annie Malone's former apprentice, and she actually widened the teeth on the hot comb. And once she did that, its popularity exploded. The main function of the hot comb is to be heated and used directly to straighten the hair from the roots. The hot comb was particularly good for afro hair whose hair was coarse. There are different hot combs that have been created, but the first hot comb invented was placed directly on a cooker stove or a wood fire, and until the 20th century, it was replaced by the electrically heated hot comb. So that's all I have for combs today. Just little nuggets of information that most people probably don't know about and don't care about, or didn't know that they cared about. But here's another. Actually, I'm not done. I do have one more.
But wait, there's more.
Yes, I do have one more piece of information about the comb, and it has to do with cats.
I'm listening.
Do you know what kind of comb that the cat uses to groom itself?
The tongue.
No, a catacomb.
Oh. That's good.
Is it good?
It is good.
So I'm finished with the comb.
Already?
I thank you everybody for suffering through that.
know what you're talking about. My day has drastically improved now that I know all these things about combs.
I am ready to hear what you have.
I wanted to think of something that that I actually wanted to know more about. And so one of those things is eye color and how that's inherited and what goes into eye color, which is what I'm going to talk about today.
I would definitely like to know more about that.
Well, I started out by asking the question that Matt has heard me ask before, which is, what color are my eyes? Because they're really kind of a nondescript sort of color.
They're hard to describe because her eye color changes.
Yes, and I'll talk more about that in a minute too. I realize that I haven't asked you. What's something you think you know about eye color?
Well, I don't know if this is true. It probably isn't, but
let's find out together.
I once heard that babies are born with blue eyes.
That is pretty true.
Oh, okay.
I'll talk about that later. That's not unequivocally true, but I'll talk about why that's true and when that's true.
Okay.
So I wanted to have a robot figure out for me what color my eyes are. And so using extremely very, very good science, I pulled a bunch of pictures of me from Facebook and used the eyedropper tool in Photoshop to determine the RGB values of several different photos of my eyes. So from there, I took all those values and kind of averaged them into something that looked kind of right to me, and, used those values and also created a hex code for it, and then plugged that in to basically Pantone's website, which puts a name to colors. Mm-hmm. And so, in case anybody's curious, the red, green, blue values of my eyes are 106, 134, 145, respectively, which means that green and blue are about equal, with just a little bit more blue, but that's not saying that my eyes are blue. Mm-hmm. Because I also did this for your eyes, and we'll talk about that.
I was just about to ask
if you... I also did this for your eyes, but...
Look at you thinking about me.
So, when I put the hex code and the RGB values into some of these sites, the color name that it came up with was slate gray. Or generic gray.
Isn't that the color of, like, some iPhones, slate gray?
I don't know. Maybe you should Google that.
No, I think it's space gray. Anyway.
But, so, that was a little...
plug for the iPhone.
Okay, yeah. You want to sponsor us? So, basically that means that my eyes are gray. And to that end, it makes more sense why it's difficult to identify them as a color, because gray is not really a color. But other funny color names that popped up when I was comparing, websites that pretty much compiled, like, names of paint chips for various brands using the same hex code. So basically different names for the same color. Some of them were really funny. And my favorites were, my favorite one was probably Moody Gray. I felt really called out. Mm-hmm. There's also Porpoise Gray.
I can imagine what that looks like.
There's Stolen Moment. Silver Blueberry.
Sounds delicious.
Steel Teal.
Okay.
Motown Blues. And Smoked Turquoise. That's a nice one. And finally, one that I just don't understand, which is Gray Wackle. I guess it's a type of stone, but I had to Google it. I was also curious about your eye color, because we know that your eyes are brown, but I am fiercely protective of brown eyes and people with brown eyes, because I think that they're very underrated. So you can say somebody's eyes are brown, but I want to know what kind of brown. Because the variation of brown eyes is pretty much just as varied as non-brown eyes. So, and maybe it's just because I like you, but I think you have pretty eyes.
Yeah, I don't actually... That's not something I think about, is the variation of brown eyes. Because when I see brown eyes, it's just like brown is brown. But like there's so many different shades of green and blue.
Turns out there's a lot of shades of brown, too. And so I did the same thing using the same very, very good science.
Are there like, how many are there? Like 50?
I don't even want to know, but it's definitely more than 50. It's at least 50.
Okay.
But I did the same very, very good science to average the color values of your eyes as well. And so the RGB values of your eyes are 115, 63, and 45. So how I said before, like just because I have more blue value than green value doesn't mean my eyes are blue any more than it means your eyes are red. Because you have more red values than I do. And when I plugged in those color values to find out, if there was a color name, it came up with Old Copper.
That was the nickname that they gave me in elementary school.
Well, it's fitting, apparently.
Walking down the hall, look, there's Old Copper.
There's Old Copper. They also gave the name Faux Garnet. But maybe this makes some sense because brown is just dark orange. So...
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, color's weird. I would love to do like a whole separate segment on color, except for it's way too smart for me. So I'm not sure that I ever could.
Well, wait, so why is it way too smart for
because
you?
It's complicated. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that I'm going to get into later that you're going to hear me explain really poorly, but a lot of it has to do with wavelengths and light.
And like absorption lines.
Yeah, and that gets into physics and yeah, so maybe that would be a good one for you to do instead because I just get very, very lost. But, I can do some sensation perception stuff because of my background in psych, but to get into the nuts and bolts about why light refraction and waves and things like that. No, I'm bad at that. I am not. That's a little too smart for me. But there were some other funny color names with your eyes, including but not limited to Van Dyke Brown.
Yeah, no, Van Dyke Brown. Is
that your other nickname?
That sounds like a good gangster nickname. So, the first day of class starts tomorrow for this new semester. And every time I tell my professors, I give them a new nickname to call me. Like last semester, it was just Maddie G. Mm-hmm. But I think I'm going to have one of my professors call me Van Dyke Brown.
I mean, that would be good, but don't count out the following colors that I'm about to list because, you don't want to count these out. Some of these are really good.
I'll put it in my top 5.
Yeah. So... Also on the list, Rugged Brown, Brownie Points, Deep in the Woods, Sumptuous Spice.
Yeah, these are sounding kind of sexy now.
See, I told you, brown eyes are underrated. This is a great one, Clotted Red.
Clotted Red.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is my second favorite one, Pookie Bear. And my favorite one, which is Possum Kingdom.
I'm trying to think of how I could use that as a nickname. I could just go by Possum King.
Oh yeah, that's my favorite thing that I've heard so far.
Yeah.
But now's the time where I can get into what eye color is and how it's inherited. It's more complicated than they taught us in school. I don't know about you, but I was taught that blue was a recessive gene and brown was a dominant gene. So basically, when we were taught how to do like Punnett squares, it was kind of like your typical sort of 2x2 Punnett square where you would discover that brown would overtake blue in like 3/4 of cases. But it really turns out that eye color is a polygenic phenotype, so that means that lots of different genes determine how the color is expressed. And so eye color genetics are so complex that two parents can have a kid with basically any eye color. So it's not gone, but I wish gone were the days of making jokes that somebody's mom stepped out on somebody's dad because the kid has different color eyes.
Yeah, like two blue-eyed parents had a kid with brown eyes.
Yeah, that's entirely genetically possible.
So it's more likely to have different colored eyes as your parents than like hair color.
Yeah, hair color is another one that is, I think, a little complicated, but to my knowledge, not that I Googled this, not quite as complicated, or at least not as poorly understood as eye color, because that one is a really complicated one. So, like, I think it's less likely that when two people have a kid, that kid could have like basically any hair color you could think of. Whereas with eye color, that's really the case. Like pretty much any eye color you could think of could be born to like two people, with just only a few exceptions. But the Punnett square for that is more like, I don't know, like a 6x6 or something rather than like a 2x2. And that's just what we know about. Like there are a lot of genes out there right now that are of interest in terms of determining eye color, but we haven't even figured out all of them, and we don't even know for sure like that the ones we've identified are doing what we think that they're doing. But there's a lot that goes into it. It's really complex, but in general, brown eyes are dominant, but that's because we all used to have brown eyes. Lighter eye color is a mutation, and it's thought that if you have blue eyes, you're all distantly related. But that's complicated because eye color is also a spectrum.
Like what? Like you come from the same
like
haplogroup?
Like, yeah, something like you have a common ancestor. So we all used to have brown eyes, and so brown eyes is more common. It's certainly more common across the world. But it's not as simple as, brown overtakes blue in 3/4 of cases when it's in the gene pool. That's just not how it works, even though that's how it was taught, and I think probably is still taught.
Yeah, I mean, I always was under the impression that because it's a darker color, that's why it's dominant. It's like with skin color.
Yeah, and even that I think has a lot to do with, all of this, including eye color, has a lot to do with melanin and how much is there in terms of like pigmentation and light absorption. So I think almost all phenotypes in people, but also in non-people, are more complicated than we think. But eye color in particular is like a real weird one. And if the genetics of eye color weren't weird enough, the perception of eye color is even weirder. This is what really got me down a rabbit hole. But before I go completely into that, I want to break down like the two parts of the iris that help determine eye color, because there's basically two parts. And one is the epithelium at the back, which is pigmented somewhere between light brown and black. And the other is the stroma at the front, which is made up of colorless collagen and contains varying degrees of melanin. So a higher concentration of melanin equals more light absorption, which gives a darker appearance to the eyes regardless of how much collagen is in there or where it's deposited. So that's, your brown eyes. For example, green eyes don't have much melanin in them, but they also have no collagen deposits, which means that while some of the light entering them is absorbed by the pigment, the particles in the stroma also scatter light as a result of something called the Tyndall effect, which creates a blue hue and is similar to the type of light scattering that makes the sky look blue. So combined with the brown melanin, the eyes appear green. And so that's just for eye colors where there's a lot of melanin present. But in a lot of eye colors, like blue, for example, there's like no melanin or very little melanin. And so when you get into eye colors like that, it's pretty much all to do with light scattering and very little to do, if nothing to do with pigmentation. This is like, it gets really, really insane from here. This is where I got down my rabbit hole, because apparently pretty much all eye color is just a trick of the light. Like, aside from the melanin in your epithelium, there's no pigment in your iris at all, so blue eyes aren't blue. Like, if you cut your eyes in half, there would be no blue pigment in there. Which I thought was wild.
Yeah. But if you cut like a brown eye in half, you're saying there would be the brown pigmentation. Because
it would all be like due to the melanin, so it would be darker, but like that, that exact like shade of faux garnet that your eyes have, it wouldn't be present. Like if I sliced your eyes in half, I could just tell that your eyes were darker because of like the color of the epithelium and like the pigment in the stroma. So I could determine that you had dark eyes, but I wouldn't be able to, like, look at, you know, like a coronal cut of your eye and be like, oh yes, like, it was this beautiful old copper. And you would be even less likely to be able to tell what color, like, blue somebody's eyes were.
Uh-huh.
So, this means that our eyes have something called structural coloration. And this like really freaked me out, because structural coloration is when there are microscopically structured surfaces fine enough to interfere with visible light. So, for example, peacock tail feathers are actually pigmented brown, but their microscopic structure makes them reflect blue and turquoise and green light.
Huh.
And I was like, no. But it's true. It's not pigmentation. It's a trick of the light. And so people with blue eyes have colorless stroma and no collagen deposits, so their color is basically entirely attributed to light scattering. And people with gray eyes, they're actually not totally sure. But the running theory is that people with gray eyes have excess collagen compared to people with blue eyes, which changes the way light is scattered, similar to how the sky turns gray when it rains. So that means I have rainy day eyes, which is on brand for me.
It is.
So what else? Oh, lots of babies are born with blue eyes, like you said, and that's because of low melanin levels. And low melanin levels are basically determined by a combination of genetics and light exposure. So, like, you could have a lot of melanin, but because we don't tend to be exposed to a lot of light in utero, and even when we're brand new babies.
So, the color of your eye basically can change after you're born due to light exposure.
Yeah, yes, light exposure and just, like, the amount of melanin that, like, you're born with. So if genetically you are born with more melanin, your eyes will become darker, and then also, like, because of light exposure. So it's that combination, like, both through genetics and light exposure.
Now, can your eyes change color throughout the course of your life?
I think the answer is mostly no. Eye color tends to stabilize after 3 years.
Okay.
So by the time you're 3 years old, it should be pretty stable, but there are other things that can cause changes in eye color. There are some things that can change the appearance of your eye color, and structural changes that can happen to the eye that influence that eye color. But what is more likely to influence changes in eye color is basically just boils again down to light. So if you're like me and your eyes appear to change color based on what you're wearing, that, you know, has really nothing to do with, like, any physical change in your eye, and everything to do with, like, color perception and, like, the color wheel, you know, because if you think back to elementary school art classes, some colors bring out or wash out other colors.
Uh-huh.
So if I am wearing, like, if I'm wearing something that's the color of old copper, that's a complementary color to, like, the bluish gray of my eyes, so that would make my eyes appear brighter. So,
did you learn anything about the phenomenon of where people are born with different color eyes?
Yes.
Or even animals?
That's called heterochromia, and I will get there in a minute.
Oh. Okay.
So sometimes structural details about the eye can change the color. So, for example, like, my pupils are really big pretty much at all times. And side note, when I asked an optometrist about this, he said, that's fine as long as they're the same size.
Now, why would that be?
Well, you want your pupils to be the same size so that they're taking in the same amount of light and not interfering with, like, your vision. David Bowie has two different size pupils.
Or had.
Yeah. But his, so people look at him and they think, oh, he has two different color eyes, and that's not technically true. Really, one of his pupils is just a lot bigger than the other one, and that happened as a result of a fist fight he had as a teen over a girl.
Oh,
Did you think it was drugs? Because I thought it was drugs.
That's what I heard.
Somebody told me it was drugs. Maybe you heard from me that it was drugs, but I looked into it.
Yeah, I hear a lot from you. That's where I get my facts.
Yeah, the Google scholars. I heard something once from somebody. But yeah, apparently it was a fist fight over a girl that he got into as a teen. So, like, if your pupils tend to be really big, that means that there's less of the iris that's, like, available to observe, and the remaining, like, surface area of the iris is, like, harder to see. So that's part of why I think, like, it was difficult to determine what color my eyes are, is just because, like, my pupil has a tendency to be oversized compared to, like, other people. That it's just a little difficult to see. They can look a little darker, and so things like that can just make it more difficult to determine. And then, you know, what about people who have different colored eyes? In most cases, it's genetic and, like, benign. Heterochromia is, like, really interesting because of how many different forms it can take. Like, there's, like, full heterochromia, where, like, one eye is just straight up a different color from the other one, but then there's, like, partial or central or sectoral heterochromia, where just, like, sections of the eyes are different colors. So a lot of people have, like, central heterochromia, where, like, the center of their eye is a different color from, like, the outer area of their eye. So, like, the part that's touching the pupil could be, like, a yellow or green, and the outside is, like, a blue. But, you know, then there are, like, people who have maybe, like, a spot of brown in one eye versus the other, and so that would be more of, like, a sectoral heterochromia, and that can be caused by just, like, simple gene expression, or it could have to do with, like, the way the collagen is deposited. So, yeah, but there are other things that, you know, sometimes heterochromia can develop if you have health conditions. So there is, like, David Bowie got an injury, but you can also get it from eye surgery, eye bleeding, swelling, injury, glaucoma, or iris tumors, which horrified me that that's a thing that could happen.
Yeah, sounds made up, but...
It sounds made up. That's another tagline of this podcast. Sounds made up. Maybe it is. In my very, very, very extended super expert research, several sources warn to get to a doctor ASAP if you notice your eyes have suddenly changed color significantly. So there's my due diligence. If you wake up and your eyes are a totally different color from how they were the day before, maybe go see a doctor.
Now, what might the doctor say about that?
Well, I don't know. I hope that if that happens to somebody, they'll report back to me.
I'll probably tell you to stop jumping on the bed.
Most likely. Or maybe don't get into fist fights about girls. Don't get punched in the face. To hear him tell it in the one, you know, the two sources I looked up very quickly before recording this, it wasn't even a particularly, like, hard punch. It was just, like, in the right spot, and a fingernail might have, like, gotten in there to scratch his eye, and it just, like, didn't heal right.
Huh. And it just changed the whole iris.
Yeah, I mean, really, I think it more changed the pupil and the way that it, like, contracts or doesn't contract. But, yeah, like, that's kind of the other thing that I was talking about before, is, like, the size of the pupil can influence how the color of the iris is perceived. So, like, if you look at a picture of David Bowie, like, you can tell that both eyes are kind of bluish, but even the one with the bigger pupil, like, it definitely looks darker than the other one. But that's partially because of that trick of the light, that the pupil is so much larger that there's less surface area to observe the actual color.
Okay.
So that's me sort of poorly explaining that. Particularly on the David Bowie front, I don't really want people to fact check me. But we'll see about that. But I hope you don't have a lot of questions about this, because that's pretty much all I know.
I'm already getting a bunch of emails.
But this is pretty much all I know about eye color. But now I can't really... Yeah.
That was way more thorough than what I had about combs, and a lot more researched.
Again, this might end up being a theme.
How much time did you spend researching that?
So this is not even that much time, but this is why every time you were like, do you want to record the podcast, I got irritated with you. Because it was like, well, no, because I need to look stuff up. And you're like...
Let's just do it.
Let's just do it. My favorite thing that happened is when I said, you know, we need to outline the way this episode goes. And you were like, that's a good idea. And I was like, yeah, it is.
Maybe next time.
Maybe next time, but like I said,
Only
I
maybe.
hope that those are all the questions you had on eye color.
Yeah, you ticked off all the boxes on my list.
You had good questions.
Did I?
You
Oh,
did.
I
They were
hope.
good.
Maybe that should just be. Maybe you present all the facts and I just ask the
No,
questions.
no, you don't get to just give me a bunch of homework.
All right. Well, I have a second topic. Did you have a second topic?
No.
Okay, that's fine. This will make up for my segment about combs. And this will be more entertaining, I think,
More entertaining than combs?
if you can believe it.
I can't. No, I don't believe you at all.
So, I basically just compiled a list of 20 idioms and their meaning as well as their origins.
I'm interested. I'm immediately very interested.
So, this one was actually more fun to research. I kind of got bored with combs.
I can tell you got bored with combs.
I don't know why I stuck with combs. But anyway.
Here's my tip. If I ask you why did you choose something and you can't answer the question, then maybe move on to something different.
Yeah, I don't know.
Tell me about the idioms.
So the idioms I compiled, like I said, there's 20 of them. And so I'll give you the meaning and kind of break down the origin of where that saying came from. Most of these idioms are things that we only really know what they mean through the context of their usage when we don't really think about why they are the way they are, you know. So the first one I have is straight from the horse's mouth.
I was like, what? What's straight from the horse's mouth?
This idiom. So straight from the horse's mouth. The meaning behind straight from the horse's mouth is to get information directly from the most reliable source, i.e. the Google scholars.
Mm-hmm.
This one is said to come from the 1900s, when buyers could determine a horse's age by examining its teeth. There's also, it's related to another idiom. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. You don't want to lick
Yeah, I was
lick
gonna
a gift
say
horse in the mouth
you
either.
probably shouldn't want to. Yeah, you probably don't want to lick any horse
But
in the
don't
mouth.
look a gift horse in the mouth. The reason for that is apparently inspecting a gift is considered bad etiquette. So if somebody gave you a horse as a gift and you started inspecting its teeth, it would be considered an insult.
It's like if I put dinner in front of you and then you smell it, I get mad about it.
Well, what if it smells good?
Just eat it.
But that was one of the straight from the horse's mouth. I knew what that meant. I don't think I ever really understood what "don't look a gift horse in the mouth" meant. So this was an enlightening one. Letting the cat out of the bag, number 2. So letting the cat out of the bag means to reveal a secret, often mistakenly. Its origins are from the 1700s, or up to and including the 1700s. A common street fraud included replacing valuable pigs with less valuable cats.
What?
I know. Apparently, cats are less valuable than pigs. Did you know that?
Well, I'm not going to eat any of these cats. So.
But replacing valuable pigs with less valuable cats and selling them in bags. When a cat was let out of the bag, the jig was up.
I think the part that's making me laugh is like replacing valuable pigs with less valuable cats, which almost makes it sound like there could be a situation in which there was a cat that was more valuable than a given pig.
Yeah.
And I would love to imagine what kind of cat that would be, because it certainly wouldn't be any of ours.
That's for sure.
Especially this one that is clawing right next to the microphone.
So burning the candle at both ends. This is another one I don't think I ever fully understood what it meant. But it means to live at a frenetic or dangerous pace, with adverse effects on one's health. The origin is said to come from 18th century England. The phrase was used literally. You'd be wasting a valuable candle if you attempted to burn it at both ends.
So has anybody ever told you that you're burning the candle at both ends? No.
I've never lived fast and loose.
Well, I think when you're spending... We'll see how you feel, like, while we're still doing this podcast when the semester gets started.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, you could say the amount of time I've devoted to assignments... I've burned the candle at both ends.
It's mostly what I was thinking about.
Yeah.
I think in a lot of contexts these days, it's talking about particularly college students, especially ones who also have to work.
Yeah, I was thinking more in the context of bungee jumping and skydiving in the same day.
No,
something.
It's much more depressing than that.
The next one, number 4, is butter someone up. Its meaning is to praise or flatter someone, usually to gain a favor. The origin is a customary religious act in ancient India that included throwing butterballs at the statues of gods to seek good fortune and their favor.
What?
Now...
That I would not have guessed.
Okay, that explains that, but...
Does it?
Well, it explains where the phrase comes from, because they explained it.
Sure.
It explains where the phrase comes from because they explained it. That's an intelligent sentence.
It's a scholarly sentence.
No, what I am more curious to know is why it occurred these Indians to throw balls of butter in the first place. That's what I want to know. So maybe I should do more digging into that one, because there's got to be a reason for why it was butter balls.
To do more scholarly research. Yeah, I mean, to me, it seems like butter would be kind of a valuable resource. Because it requires that you have, like, milk and that you can have the human resources to, like, churn it and turn it into butter and then turn it into a butter ball. So it seems like a valuable thing to just throw at a statue, and maybe that's the point.
That sounds both logical and reasonable.
Right, yes, so it's scholarly, one might even say.
Even if it's not true, it's a very good guess.
You flatter me.
Well, don't go flying off the handle.
Are you sure that you're not just trying to butter me up? But yeah, I'll fly off the handle.
Flying off the handle means to suddenly become enraged. This one is said to come from poorly made axes of the 1800s that would literally detach from the handle.
Oh, God.
I'm wondering, was it just the 1800s? Were all axes made very well, and then the 1800s, axe makers just started slacking? Yeah,
they were, like, mass producing, and then they did a recall, and, it was after a bunch of lawsuits, probably.
Probably.
They did those, like, class action lawsuit commercials, and, they just couldn't afford to keep producing shoddy axes.
I bet that's it.
This cat
another logical and reasonable explanation.
I'm full of them. I'm full of lots of things.
Get ready to bite the bullet, or not.
I'd rather not.
To bite the bullet means to accept something unpleasant or difficult. So this is pre-World War I. So during a war, or in times when doctors did not have anesthesia, they would distract the patient from pain by asking them to bite down hard on a bullet.
Oh, God.
The first recorded written use of this phrase was in The Light That Failed in 1891. I don't know what The Light That Failed is, if that is a book or a poem or...
Well, somebody is going to Google it. The Light That Failed is a novel by the Nobel Prize-winning English author Rudyard Kipling.
Ah, the Jungle Book guy.
And it was dated January 1891. Most of the novel is set in London. but many important events throughout the story occur in Sudan. It follows the life of Dick Helder. And I'm 31 years old. An artist and painter who goes blind, and his unrequited love for his childhood playmate Maisie.
So many jokes you could come up with.
Dick Helder.
Dick Helder. It's a joke that tells itself.
It does. It does. Anyway, that's what that is.
Well, I'm sure that Dick Helder was a real basket case. Basket case. A thing or person considered useless or not able to cope. That makes sense, because his name was Dick Helder. He probably couldn't cope with that.
Probably not. Who could?
The phrase initially referred to soldiers who lost their limbs, and possibly originated in 1919, when rumors circulated that limbs of decapitated soldiers arrived in baskets at hospitals.
Ew.
Major General M.W. Ireland was the first to refer to these as basket cases in his bulletin to express that they had not seen the said baskets.
I hate that.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure after you lose your limbs, you probably will start feeling a bit under the weather. Do you like these segues?
They're really good. And I know that you didn't plan them ahead of time, so that makes them even more impressive.
Under the weather, to feel sick. We all know this one.
Well, that's presumptuous.
But we don't know... So, under the weather was another one of those that I knew based on its context. But I always thought it meant like, oh, when the weather's bad, you don't feel good under the weather. And that has nothing to do... Well, a little bit to do, but...
has like 10% to do.
Yeah, there's more to it. So, originally, sailors used the phrase under the weather bow, referring to the side of the ship that would get the brunt of the wind during storms.
Uh-huh.
To avoid getting seasick when the waves got rough, they'd bunker down in their cabins, literally under the bad weather, and let the storm pass.
That's cool.
It is. So...
I didn't know that either. Do you have a segue?
I'm trying to think of one, but hey, don't jump the shark. Jump the shark. The moment when a form of entertainment reaches a declining quality by including gimmicks to maintain interest. So, sounds on point, right?
Yeah, I mean, for us, there's nowhere to go but up.
So the origin for this comes from the show Happy Days, when character Fonzie literally jumps over a shark while water skiing. Afterward, radio personality John Hine popularized the phrase "jump the shark" to describe the decline of the show.
Oh, man. More like Unhappy Days.
Ha ha!
You're so mean.
Well, I'll try not to give you the cold shoulder. Meaning to snub or turn someone away. Etymologists think the phrase originated from medieval etiquette. After a feast, hosts in England would subtly signal that the meal was over and it was time for the guests to leave, when they served them a cold slice of pork, mutton, or beef shoulder. So that was another one that...
is gross.
Well, sure, but... it's one of those that you know through its context, and you think, give someone the cold shoulder, like turn away from them, and you're being cold. But that's actually intuitively where your mind goes, but it actually has nothing to do with how that originated.
Yeah. Breaking
the ice. To make a group feel comfortable so as to cultivate friendship. Alternatively, means to stop a conflict between friends. So it comes from a time when roads were not yet fully developed. Ships were the main means of transportation and trade. During the winter, these ships
might get stuck on ice that formed on lakes and other bodies of water. The receiving country would send smaller ships and help the trade ships pass by breaking the ice for them. This gesture has come to mean an invitation of friendship between the sending and receiving countries. So, once friendship was established, I guess they would bury the hatchet.
Well, I don't know. Icebreakers.
You ruined my segue.
I'm sorry, but you didn't give me time to comment on your icebreaker. Which is funny because I hate icebreakers.
Yeah, they are awkward, aren't they?
Do you have a favorite icebreaker question?
No. Whenever I did icebreakers, it always was in the form of games.
Well, yeah, there are games. But, a lot of the icebreakers that I do in my line of work
are asking people questions.
Yeah, or if we have team meetings or something where we don't have a whole lot of time to do an entire game, they'll raise a question like, if you could bring back any fashion trend, what would it be? Or, what was your favorite song in middle school? Or this one is one that I think this one is the only one that I actually like, but it's not funny. It's if you could do anything in life, if you could try anything and knew that you wouldn't fail, what would it be?
I guess one icebreaker question that I remember was asked to me, what superpower would I want if I could choose one? Mm-hmm. And I said omnipotence. Mm-hmm. And they were like, that's not a superpower.
Well, I think that's debatable. Moving on.
So, burying the hatchet means to forget an offense and be reconciled. Long ago, when the Puritans were fighting the Native Americans had a tradition of burying their hatchets, clubs, tomahawks, and knives during peace negotiations. The act of burying weapons and making them inaccessible was their sign for peace.
I'm into it.
Number 13 is kick the bucket, which means to die. This one is actually... I didn't like the origin for this one at all. It was kind of sad.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
You should have made it the last one, so we could end on a high note.
Yeah. So during the 16th century, butchers would slaughter animals by hanging them on a wooden beam, which was called a bucket at that time. When the animals were killed, many of them would have a sudden convulsion, causing them to kick violently into the bucket. So, kicking the bucket has nothing to do with an actual bucket.
It reminds me of that horrible scene in The Walking Dead at the trough at the compound.
Oh, right.
Yeah. No spoilers, but that was really graphic.
That was how many seasons ago at this point?
I don't know. It was literally years ago.
Yeah.
No spoilers. It's a spoiler-free zone.
Well, I don't want to make anyone as mad as a hatter by spoiling things. Mad as a hatter, which means to be totally crazy. Although the term reminds us of the Mad Hatter in Alice in Wonderland, the true origin of this phrase goes back to the 17th and 18th centuries. In 17th century France, hat makers used mercury on the hat felt, which resulted in poisoning. The poisoning resulted in irritability, shyness, and tremors, all of which reminded observers of a person going mad.
Shyness?
Yeah, I don't know. That's just what it says, shyness. Maybe I wore a lot of hats with mercury.
We all did.
I don't get tremors, but I do get irritability and shyness. That's for sure.
Relatable.
So it was called the Mad Hatter disease.
So the Mad Hatter is from the phrase. The phrase isn't from the character.
Exactly, which I always thought it came from the Mad Hatter in Alice in Wonderland.
Well, that makes sense.
This one's pretty interesting. Red herring. A clue that is meant to mislead or distract someone. During the 17th century, man, I feel a lot of these are like from the 17th and 18th centuries.
It was when stuff was coming into fashion.
Yeah. During the 17th century, hunters would train their dogs to follow the correct scent. They would do this by placing pungent smoked fish in trees to distract the dogs, so they would become used to ignoring irrelevant scents. That makes sense.
Boo.
The next one, number 16, so we're approaching the end here.
Already?
We're getting close.
We just got started. Only 27 takes later.
You know, I didn't pour days of research into this. This was...
Don't tell them that. This was just days and days of...
Yeah, it was one day for each idiom.
Back-breaking research. So much scholarship.
Yeah.
Much information.
Uh-huh.
So number 16?
Number 16. You know this one pretty well, because I've heard you say it a lot. I've heard you explain it a lot.
Oh, no.
And this one is blood is thicker than water.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to do the honors?
No.
Okay.
This is your scholarship, Mr. Google.
All right. So you probably think this means you should always put family ahead of friends. In fact, it originally may have meant the opposite. The full maxim was, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb, with covenant referring to friendship. In other words, it was your friends, your blood brothers, if you will, who were with you through thick and thin, not necessarily your family.
Hashtag chosen family. I'm all about it.
Well, you know, sometimes you just gotta turn a blind eye. To... What, do you have something to say?
Nope, not at all.
All right.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Turn a blind eye. To consciously ignore unwanted information. The phrase to turn a blind eye is said to originate with British Admiral Horatio Nelson, who allegedly looked through his telescope using his blind eye to avoid signals from his superior telling him to withdraw from battle. So the guy was kind of a dick, I guess.
Yeah.
But, you know, that naval admiral, I'm sure he was armed to the teeth. Meaning to be extremely well equipped.
Like we are for this podcast.
Yeah. Equipped with knowledge.
Very much. The most.
Armed to the teeth. The idea behind being armed to the teeth is that the weapon wielder would carry the maximum number of weapons so that they would be forced to carry some between their teeth. Number 19. Riding shotgun. We all know this one. It is to ride in the front seat of a vehicle. Specifically the passenger seat. But this comes from the Wild West. When driving a coach, whoever sat next to the driver in the front seat often needed to have a shotgun in order to kill any robbers that might come upon them.
Naturally.
So that's where we get the phrase riding shotgun. But, you know, I bet the folks who rode shotgun, you know, they gave it the whole 9 yards.
Not your best work.
You're right. And this is number 20. So
Ending on a high note.
Yeah, ending on a high note. So to go the whole 9 yards means to give your all towards something. Fighter pilots during World War II had 9 yards worth of ammunition. When they gave their all to the battle, they would run out of this whole 9 yards of ammunition. And that is where we get the whole 9 yards. So those are my 20 idioms.
Well, you are the foremost expert on idioms in this room. So I really appreciated.
Between the two of us and one cat.
Yeah, can you believe there's only one in here right now?
I know. There were all three of them earlier.
They like to be a part of this.
They got bored.
Yeah.
Yeah, the cats got bored. They went away. What else do we have? Well, I don't think we have anything else.
Well, I don't know that we need anything else.
Yeah.
Tune in next time where I will educate you on the wonders of bone marrow.
Yeah. I'm making fun of you, but like I am legitimately very interested in hearing more about bone marrow. And I'm going to be telling everybody about Friesen, which is aesthetic or musical chills.
Yes, and if you would like to submit your own suggestions about what you think we should talk about, you can email us at theGscholars@gmail.com.
Thank you all so much for taking this journey with us. We hope you didn't not learn something.
And remember, folks, be sure to spay and neuter your pets.